Good morning and welcome back. I enjoyed very much our first session there. There was a lot of good information that was shared with us, critical information, and I think for a lot of our members, we're acutely aware that COVID hasn't gone anywhere and it continues to impact our lives. And both of the doctors just present very compelling information. Our next session is being moderated by our good friend Richard Knight. He is still up in Maryland, still has COVID, and still doesn't want to expose any of us to that when we're most appreciative of that. The session is titled Innovations in Home Dialysis and Remote Monitoring Technologies. So Richard, I turn it over to you, and good to see you again.
Thanks, Ed. I really appreciate it. But I'm going to tell you, it's tough not being there, because the information in that last session on COVID, I took a lot of notes in, and I was just totally in the dark in terms of my lack of understanding about masks. So I hope many of you, like myself, really took note and got educated. But however, I want to thank everyone for joining us today for the 49th Annual AAKP National Patient Meeting. If you took part in the first day of our event, I hope you enjoyed the sessions. And if you're just joining us today or coming back, well, welcome back. As Ed mentioned earlier, my name is Richard Knight, and I have the privilege, and believe me, it's a privilege, of serving as the immediate past president of AAKP. Again, I'm a transplant recipient, 18 years out from a living donor. However, as someone who's also experienced dialysis firsthand, I understand the journey that many of you are on, and deeply committed to supporting and advocating for my fellow kidney warriors. And let's be very clear, there's always the possibility, as much as I don't like to think about it, at one point I may have to go back on dialysis. So this session here is of particular interest to myself. And as a proud member of AAKP, I firmly believe that every kidney patient's voice is paramount, especially in today's time, in determining their care plan. And it's essential that we cultivate an environment that encourages kidney disease research and innovation, driving continuous advancements in care, improved treatments, and solutions for unmet patient needs. And once these innovations receive FDA approval, it's equally as important that all patients have access to and the right to choose the best treatment for them in consultation with their chosen healthcare team. This ensures that every patient can live their best life and achieve their aspirations. As many of you know, the benefits of home dialysis therapies are clear. Home options are proven to provide patients with greater autonomy, flexibility, improved health and health outcomes, and a higher quality of life. Emphasis on the quality of life. However, it's estimated that less than 12% of patients requiring dialysis use home dialysis. This is stark contrast to what a survey of nephrologists found out, that over 90% of them would choose home dialysis for themselves. Ponder that for a second. So the question is, how can we change this paradigm? I have long said early identification, slow the progression, and if a patient progresses towards end-stage kidney failure, they must be fully educated in an unbiased manner on all of their treatment options. Back in 2004, when I transitioned from the hospital to a dialysis facility, I was given no option at all. So thankful for the progress that has been made in that regard. With that said, innovation plays a vital role as well. As home dialysis technology advances, patients are becoming more comfortable knowing that even when at home, they are not alone in their treatments. With that, it's my honor to introduce our next session, titled Innovations in Home Dialysis and Remote Monitoring Technologies. That includes a great lineup of experts in the field that have been driving groundbreaking advances in these areas. First, we'll begin by sharing some recorded remarks from Dr. Michelle Tarver, who currently serves as the acting director of the Center for Devices and Radiological Health. Dr. Tarver is a visionary public health executive, board certified in ophthalmology, and holds a doctorate in epidemiology. She has over 15 years of experience as a medical device regulator, conducting clinical research and driving strategic initiatives. She has held various leadership positions at the FDA, including Deputy Director of the Office of Strategic Partnerships, and Program Director of Patient Science and Engagement. Unfortunately, Dr. Tarver was unable to join us live, but as the outstanding allied partner she is, we are pleased to have some time with her earlier. And I'd like for you to turn your attention to the screen as Dr. Carver serves us with some insights about FDA's new initiative, Home as a Healthcare Hub.
Thank you so much, Richard, for the kind introduction, and thank you for letting me present today at the National Patient Meeting of the American Association of Kidney Patients. It truly is an honor to be here today. And I'm really excited to share with you the work we're doing at the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, and particularly focused on home as a healthcare hub. I want to start first with grounding you a little bit on the work we do at the Center for Devices and Radiological Health. We regulate all medical products that are devices. That includes things that are diagnostics, those devices that are used in the management and monitoring of a condition, as well as the treatment of that condition. It could be everything from contact lenses and infusion pumps to home hemodialysis devices and urine tests. Our vision is that patients, and really all people in the US, have access to high quality, safe and effective medical devices of public health importance first in the world. And we're not in competition with our global neighbors. We're really wanting to make sure that timely access is evidenced in our decision-making processes. We have 3 different strategic initiatives that are helping us realize that vision. The first is our work to promote a modern and diverse workforce. Our staff is really our most precious resource, and we want to make sure that the voices that are at the table are reflective of the patient populations that we serve. As such, we want to make sure that we are adaptable, agile, and forming solutions and decisions that meet the needs of all. The second priority is enhanced organizational agility and resilience. We want to be prepared for what the future may bring, and that requires us to rethink some of what we do and be ever vigilant and agile in the strategies that we put in place. And the third priority, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today, are the work that we're doing to advance health equity. We really are committed to ensuring that no person is left behind in healthcare. The 2 steps that we are taking in that effort is, 1, ensuring that the information that's available to people that are looking for solutions is interpretable, accessible, and available. And then secondly, understanding that technology can help bridge the divide while helping to advance better healthcare, quality of life, and wellness for all. So let's start first by talking through the different facets of this particular priority. The first is what I just alluded to, is the ways in which we can better empower people to make informed decisions regarding their healthcare. In order for them to have the information that they need, it has to be, 1, available, and available in the language that they speak, as well as have the information be digestible and actionable. And we're taking deliberate steps in order to do that. The second effort that we have underway is focused on reducing barriers and increasing opportunities for participation by diverse populations in the evidence generation process. You may have seen that Congress at the end of 2022 issued an act called the Food and Drug Omnibus Reform Act. This act is focused primarily on ensuring that clinical studies have diverse cohorts. And in order to do that proactively, companies of all medical products are going to be required to put forward a diversity action plan. Now, you may have noticed that in June of this past year, we issued a draft guidance, and this is for the entire agency, medical devices, drugs, and biologic products, about how a company should develop a clinical study that considers race, ethnicity, sex, and age in the design of that clinical trial, and then how that plan can be shared with the agency. The importance about this is that there is an intentional and proactive step that we are recommending companies take as they are developing their evidence generation process so that the population of people that will ultimately be using that medical product are reflected in the studies and the evidence that supports the marketing authorization. The last two parts of this particular priority, which are focused on facilitating availability of and access to medical technologies for all populations, and supporting innovation of technologies that address health disparities, are linked. I want to suggest one effort that we did about a year and a half ago that really is focused on how we can support innovation of technologies that address health disparities. We issued an update to our Breakthrough Device Program guidance document, and that document alludes to the ways in which new technologies that address health disparities may qualify for breakthrough designation, and that may help streamline its process to market. So I really encourage folks to take a look at that program because it is a deliberate step at trying to help advance health equity. Now let's talk a little bit more about how we are working to facilitate availability of and access to medical technologies for all populations. In order for us to do that, we really do need to think about healthcare today. The way that it's operationalized is that people go to a healthcare system and initiate care with a healthcare provider. That means travel, time, those precious resources may limit access and utilization of healthcare services by many populations. It also is an episodic snapshot of what someone's daily life is like without the richness and the texture and the complexity of what life is like every single day for folks. The other challenge in our current healthcare system is that there are innovative tools and technologies available, but they aren't necessarily getting to all the people and clinicians and providers that need them because of where they live. And then lastly, there may be those solutions available, but they don't talk with each other and they don't integrate seamlessly into the healthcare system itself, which may limit optimization of care and may limit research and development efforts in the future. So now let's imagine what the next generation of healthcare delivery could look like. I think if we think about it as enabling an interrelated based approach where we are looking at a seamless integration of innovative new technologies and processes that can deliver healthcare outside of the four walls of a hospital or a clinic, and also conceptualizes care and opportunities for wellness before a person even becomes a patient. I think we're going to see the need to extend care more from the hospital and clinic to the home setting. And that will require moving the data and processes from local silos within an individual healthcare system into an integrated national network that a person can opt in or out of. It will also allow that person to engage throughout the life cycle from wellness through illness, and incorporating technologies that range from consumer-friendly wearables to traditional medical technologies, allowing us to gather evidence on real-world performance of those technologies and help drive research and development, as well as prevention, safe use, and new innovative technologies. This is really going to be fundamental to helping to ensure that no person is left behind in healthcare. It's also going to take the centricity off of the healthcare system and put it squarely on the person living with that particular health condition. That way, health and wellness solutions can be delivered in a way that's uniquely shaped experientially to the person who's living with that health condition. And those medical devices and technologies can be integrative, not interruptive, not disruptive and distracting, and they don't interfere with the home experience of comfort and safety. This is really the key to the future. And importantly, the home, which is the frontier that's often neglected in device development and conceptualization, will need to come to the forefront and be critical to the success of medical devices as we move forward. This transformed healthcare is going to be critical because we've got a couple of pressure points. The first is that the patient base is growing. Chronic diseases are prevailing in our population, and the numbers that need healthcare are rising each day. In that same context, we have a shrinking provider network where fewer and fewer physicians and healthcare professionals are available, and specialists become non-existent in certain communities. Not only are the providers disappearing, but the facilities are also disappearing, where clinics and hospitals are closing shop in many places across this country. And then lastly, the reimbursement and cost landscape is becoming more complex, with the person who's living with that health condition bearing more and more of the cost. Therefore, it really is going to make business sense for us to move some care into the home. This is the impetus behind our Home as a Healthcare Hub initiative. We are developing prototypes of the home, virtual reality enabled prototypes, that we can better conceptualize ways in which new technologies can move into the home. We're starting with the smallest footprint of a home. Those are mobile homes and apartment style living, as well as single family homes that have just the bare bones of rooms available. And building from this minimum viable product, meaning the smallest footprint of a home, we will create scalable solutions that we can imagine and develop healthcare and technology options. What's important about this is it's an idea lab. It's the place where we can begin thinking about not only adaptation of existing devices and the development of new innovative devices that can nestle unobtrusively in the home environment, but it can also foster the discussion of frameworks and the identification of missing critical elements in this pre-competitive space. We are piloting the effort in the clinical area of diabetes because we understand that this is a condition that has a natural history that touches many different organ systems, including the kidney. It also has marked racial, ethnic, and geographic disparities in prevalence and burden of disease. So in order to tackle this initiative, we are partnering with an architectural firm. We have a contract with them. And they, who are the experts in designing homes, are working with patient groups, provider organizations, the medical device, as well as the consumer tech industry, to help formulate what these virtual reality prototypes will look like. Now, moving care into the home is not new to the kidney healthcare ecosystem. In fact, the first home hemodialysis cleared device was done in 2005. But I would say that we had nothing really innovative from that time point. That is what sparked us launching a challenge in 2012 for end-stage kidney disease innovative solutions. And we have worked with patient groups over the years and foster the importance of bringing that patient perspective, that lived experience into the conversation, which you can see happened with our partnership with the Kidney Health Initiative during workshops, developing patient preference studies. And in fact, it was at one of these workshops that the KHI group worked with a sponsor to develop a patient preference study that expanded the label indication for a home hemodialysis device, freeing up the need for a caregiver to be present when someone is dialyzing at home. This was a true partnership of bringing that patient perspective in place with regulatory considerations, industry, and providers so that patients' needs can be ideally met. We've seen some innovation since then, but I would argue that there's a long way that we can still go. I want to share with you an initiative that we did with KHI, primarily looking at ways that we can plan for the future. Where is the industry going to be going? And can we help create some performance goals for, let's say, a wearable kidney device? Can we start laying some groundwork for that? And this patient preference study helped to elucidate how patients weigh the different benefits and risks associated with certain types of outcomes associated with the kidney device. Technology is one piece of this puzzle and it's vital, but it's important that we don't ignore all these other elements. One of the things that I would suggest, and thank AAKP for contributing their voice to the conversation. You all have been instrumental as partners with the agency and have also spoken up at many of the meetings that we've had that are focused on bringing these technologies home. As I said, technology is central to this. And one of the things that we've seen is some seeding of new technological solutions. We've seen several home hemodialysis devices that have been cleared for home use, as well as many peritoneal dialysis devices. We also have been seeing remote monitoring to collect physiological data that can better inform care. There's also portals that remotely communicate treatment parameters to healthcare providers, and smartphone-powered at-home urine tests that can aid in the assessment of kidney health. There's also solutions where home hemodialysis systems are equipped with detection systems for needle dislodgement All of these are steps forward, but there's more that we can do. I believe that the future is going to help revolutionize what vascular access might look like and hopefully offer needleless solutions to people who are living with end-stage kidney disease. Having devices that may predict the possibility of acute kidney injury or that create repositories for patient and treatment data that can better monitor and trend and predict prognosis for people who are living with end-stage kidney disease. And then lastly, I want to stress that it's important that we continue to be proactive in educating people who are living with the health condition. So literacy and software packages that are available to help inform how people can manage their daily life. This is not an interactional, a transactional, and a one-time touch point with somebody who lives with kidney disease. This is a day-to-day, all-day experience. And the more tools that we can provide to the community of people living with the condition that can help them take control over their health, the better off the healthcare outcomes will be. We really encourage sponsors who are looking to do innovative solutions in kidney disease to consider a couple of key pillars. The first is to consider health equity. We know that kidney disease has a differential impact on various communities and that your solutions should be designed, and we hope that they are designed in a way that they address the needs of the entire patient community. Another important consideration is bringing those patient and caregiver perspectives into the conversation and to bear in the solution development process. Also considering ways in which one might mitigate risks such as toxicity and infection and other considerations when receiving treatments for kidney disease. And lastly, really importantly, is to consider the user experience. We want people to want to engage with their technologies. And the more that they are designed in a way that meets their needs and are intuitive, the more likely we are to realize those important and improved healthcare outcomes. We are committed to collaborating across the entire ecosystem to advance health equity. And Home as a Healthcare Hub is one step towards realizing that vision. We appreciate the partnership we've had with AAKP as well as others and look forward to continuing to work together collaboratively. Thank you very much for inviting me to share with you today the exciting work we're doing at CDRH by being willing to raise your hand to help and contribute to the work that we do. And we look forward to continuing the partnership with you all in the future.
Now, those are great remarks by Dr. Tarver, and AAKP is honored to play a role in the development of this FDA initiative. Now, I'd like to turn our attention back inside the room as we move forward with our next presenter, the amazing Steve Fadem, Dr. Stephen Fadem. Steve is a good friend, and he has been with AAKP as long as I can remember. But Dr. Fadem, in his professional life, during his other time that he doesn't spend with AAKP, he is chair of the AAKP Medical Advisory Board and is a leading expert in chronic kidney disease education, serving as a clinical professor of medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. He was an early advocate for using the internet for patient education and founded several websites for disseminating clinical information. Dr. Fadem has received numerous awards for his contributions to the field of nephrology, including a gold-level Presidential Volunteer Service Award in 2020 and a Presidential Volunteer Lifetime Achievement Award in 2022. Dr. Fadem joins us today to present on the benefits of home dialysis therapies. Doc, please take it away.
Thanks, Richard. Looks like you're looking better. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be here this morning, and I guess my slides will come up eventually, right? Well, anyway, until they do, I'm really proud to be here because when we talk about peritoneal dialysis, it's not really new. It's been around since the 1970s. But the thing of it is, can we get the slides on that thing also, if possible? But the thing about it is there are two innovations that are making it available and very easy to do. And they're available and easy to do right now. This is not something that we need to work on or wait for. This is something that can happen right now. So anyway, this is somebody's home. This was the home of that was the home of Ludwig II's mother. And this is the home of Ludwig II. And Ludwig II is the person that inspired Walt Disney. He was a very big innovator and way, way ahead of his time. So I figure if we're going to show a home, why not show King Ludwig's castle and start with the top? These are I think this is quite basic for most of the people in the room, but there are two types of dialysis. One is the in-center or home hemodialysis, and the other is the peritoneal dialysis machine, which is primarily used at home. In hemodialysis, at least in center, you arrive in the waiting room and you fight heavy traffic, at least if in Houston you do. You wait until you've been called. You move to your chair where your technician is going to stick your arm and start your treatment. 4 hours later, you hold your sites, or maybe somebody will help you, and then you get transportation back home, and you will probably be tired. So even though this works for thousands of people, there probably is a better way. So let's talk about that. Peritoneal dialysis. You walk 10 to 20 feet from your comfortable couch to your bedroom. You set up your machine, clean your site, hook up the tubing, go to sleep or watch your favorite movie, then go to sleep. The following morning, you disconnect. You leave a dwell in maybe, and then you may do an extra dwell during the day, and your whole day is free. You can do whatever you want. So this is an actual hemodialysis patient. He's a great guy, very happy, and he's doing extremely well. And every time I see him and he asks me how much his transplant evaluation is coming along. So he's happy, but he's obviously waiting for a kidney transplant. This is a temporary experience for him. This is another patient that she wanted to do peritoneal dialysis, but there was a little problem that she had that got in the way of her starting right away. So she went on hemodialysis, and at the time we are talking, she is now starting peritoneal dialysis. I saw her in the office, and when we talked about her needing dialysis, the first thing I said is that I wish you could get a transplant, but you're sort of closer to my age and it's going to be hard. But let's think about dialysis. And if we have to think about it, let's think about peritoneal or home hemo. And she opted for peritoneal. She had an abdominal problem that precluded her from getting it right away. So she went on hemo, but she is very happy that she's going to be starting peritoneal very, very soon. So 2 out of 2 patients that I just showed you were on hemodialysis. One can't wait to get on PD, the other can't wait to get a transplant. So that's pretty much the story of hemodialysis. The other patients who are on hemodialysis, many are, I don't want to use the word elderly because I'm not young, but there are people that are not able to perform peritoneal dialysis for one reason or another, and they're in the hemodialysis center. And to them, it's the only option. But for this fine gentleman, peritoneal dialysis is something that he does. He loves doing it. He trained for 2 weeks, and he's about to go home, and he'll be very, very happy. So this is a typical scene right now in my dialysis experience. I'm promoting home hemo or peritoneal dialysis. Now, let me say something about home hemo. Everybody's afraid. Oh, my God, that machine is so complicated and the whole bit. Well, our washer dryer died the other day, and we had to get a new one. And it came with an operator manual. My wife said, "You're going to read the operator manual?" I said, "No, you're going to show me how it works." Well, anyway, I figured out how to work our washer dryer because I am a good husband and I understand honeydews. And so I was taught how to use the washer dryer. And after working with that, I made the commitment that if anybody can work a washer and dryer today, they can do home dialysis. So what are the contrasts between peritoneal and hemodialysis? Peritoneal dialysis, done at home with or without a machine. There are people that, I visited Bedouins in the Negev that were doing peritoneal dialysis. You do have to have a catheter placed in your abdomen. It uses your peritoneal membrane. So it's done at home, and you can do it at night. Hemodialysis requires a machine and an AV fistula in the arm. It uses a plastic dialyzer filled with hollow fibers and a thin membrane. It can be done at home or in a dialysis center. It can be done 4 hours, 3 times a week. The fistula that you see right there is that of the late Judy Weintraub, who was a very, very active member of AAKP. And she lived in Los Angeles. And it was just not too long after Pretty Women was filmed, and we stayed at the same hotel where Pretty Women was filmed, and I invited her over to the hotel, and I took a picture of her fistula right there in the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. All of the Valley girls were saying, whatever, but, I was very proud of her and her fistula, more so than everybody that was in the Beverly Wilshire with their rented Ferraris. So I miss Judy Weintraub. She was an amazing person. This is, on the left, is a Tinkoff catheter of one of my very obsessive patients who is a hand-washing freak and does everything perfectly. And you can see that is probably the prettiest Tinkoff catheter you'll ever see. And what that tells you is that the more compulsive, the more attentive you are to details, the better off you will be when you do peritoneal dialysis. It's not something that you want to take lightly if you decide to do it. You have to get real serious about it. If I'm talking to a patient, then I have to ask them, well, what's right for you? If you're single and you're elderly, retired with multiple comorbidities, and you want in-center socialization, and if you were a late referral, in-center hemo might be your only option. But if you're married or single, working or retired, active, educated, and perhaps if you can work a washer dryer, if you're independent, usually early referral, and you have a home and a home environment, PD is the best for you. Home hemo, likewise, if you're married, working or retired, active, somewhat educated, independent, and you can do home hemo. Many of my patients are truckers. They drive these 18-wheelers all over the city, and they can't drive. Dialysis patients can't drive them around the country, but they can drive in the city. And I see people backing these up, and I see bus drivers backing their buses up. And I tell them, I say, if you can back up a bus or you can back up an 18-wheeler, you can surely do home hemodialysis if you want to. Nocturnal is great for people that are working, retired but active, single, educated, or not, just barely educated. You don't have to have any formal education, but you have to be independent, and it's for early referrals. It's a great program, Nocturnal, and I like Nocturnal Home a lot too. Transplant is for people that are really want to get back to whatever they were doing and don't want to mess around with this dialysis stuff. They just want to get on with their life. They see you very, very early. You set up a preemptive transplant. You find a relative or a friend or somebody that can donate, and you get them on the list. You get them a preemptive transplant and get them back out there. That, to me, is the way to go. There's no doubt about that. There are a lot of myths about peritoneal dialysis. So, I showed Paul McCartney's walrus. I took a picture of that up in Norway, and there's a lot of stuff going on about the Beatles and that Paul was dead and the whole bit. And it was just a lie, urban legend, So anyway, so the walrus is appropriate here. But anyway, one is that if you're obese, you can't do it. That's totally wrong. There are ways you can implant the catheter. Number two, if you have a low serum albumin, that isn't true because you can replete albumin with diet, great food. Number three, advanced diabetes. Dexterity is a problem, but there are things that Baxter has invented that make it very, very easy for you to do peritoneal dialysis if you have some sort of impairments. Elderly, the word elderly to me is a myth because every year I get older, I'm on a breakfast club with people that are 10 years older than me, and they're as functional as anybody, and some are even 15 years older than me. So the word elderly is becoming a relative term. I don't know what it means anymore. Patients with prior surgery, there may be challenges, but that is also, there are workarounds. Can't be started immediately. That's one of the innovations. You can start it immediately. And can't be resumed immediately after abdominal surgery. That's totally wrong. I have a lady that just had a hernia, and she started almost immediately afterwards with low flow, low volume peritoneal dialysis, and she's back working again, doing really, really well. Home dialysis, there's a 13% lower risk of death and a 77% improvement in health. Frequent home dialysis reduces your recovery time from 8 hours to 1 hour. And in other words, if you're doing frequent dialysis, you don't feel drowsy for the rest of the day. You might feel a little bit woozy, or not woozy, but just a little fatigued for an hour, but you're ready to go. Plus, you can do it at night. Home dialysis is a very good option if home peritoneal doesn't work. In other words, you've been on home peritoneal dialysis and something happened to your membrane, you can change over to hemodialysis. It works really well. And new advancements make peritoneal and home hemodialysis easier. There's just all kinds of intervention, remote monitoring, and just ways that we can do dialysis now that make it really, really easy. Anyway, there are many pros and many cons, and I'm not going to try to share all of this with you right now, but I researched this pretty carefully because whenever we talk about pros and cons, we not only have to talk about patients, but we have to talk about this to family members. We have to get a shared decision from the family, and we talk about this with a lot of other people, academic people. We're trying very hard to get this implemented at a higher level inside the Veterans Hospital, Veterans Administration Hospital, and we're trying very hard to get it more accepted in many institutions. The dialysis companies have accepted it, but a lot of people haven't. This is the peritoneal dialysis. This is a model of what a PD looks like. It offers tremendous flexibility. Why support peritoneal dialysis? Well, I'm sure everybody knows who this guy is. At least if you don't, you know what you're holding in your hand right now. I look around out the room, everybody's holding his invention in your hand. This is Steve Jobs. Why is Steve important? Because I met with some of the people that worked with Steve Jobs, because I'm sort of a techie, and so I was meeting with some Apple people. And Steve never took no for an answer. If he asked you to do something and you said no, he would say, well, is it hard or is it impossible? And or is it wrong and immoral? If you say it's not wrong, then he'd say, then it's not, then too bad. If it's hard, I don't accept that as an answer, and there's no such thing as impossible. And consequently, you're now holding in your hand a device which has more computing power than what they used at NASA. So that's the algorithm. Is it wrong? No. Is it hard? Yes. We'll do it anyway. So what about CKD education? This was one of my visitors at my house once. Cute. Anyway, optimal starts. What are optimal starts? Optimal starts are basically what we want to do is if a patient comes to see me and they want to start on dialysis and they really are sick and they really have a situation where they can't start, they can't wait several weeks, I can put in a PD catheter and I could start them within, I can come in, I might have to do an urgent start in the hospital, but I can get them started right away with either a PD catheter. And if they want an AV fistula, if they see me early enough, I can get a fistula placed. Education is very important. In our dialysis company, we have an education program. I was really happy. I started with DaVita before they were DaVita, and I actually started something that they modeled when they set up Kidney Smart. I, believe it or not, worked with AAKP on some of this stuff. So AAKP can share a lot of the credit for what's going on right now with kidney education. What are the goals? The goals are that people should be referred for education, and they should have either a fistula placed early enough that it can mature, or they should have a peritoneal dialysis placed. And I also have my patients visit the peritoneal dialysis nurse. PD catheters take ideally 2 weeks to heal, but we can do things, we have some workarounds. You either need dialysis in 24 hours or 14 days, and if you do, we're going to start you urgently. If you need it in 14 to 60 days, you're going to get a routine start. If you eventually need it, we're going to do an embedded catheter. So what is an embedded catheter? An embedded catheter is the type of catheter that was placed by Dr. Moncrief initially when he was doing the investigational work to get FDA approval for the peritoneal catheter. He was doing animal research in dogs, and he just buried the catheter and then plucked it out at the time they needed it. We're now revisiting this and find it's a perfect option. Patients come in. They want peritoneal dialysis, but they don't need it right away. You put a catheter in, you bury it. Then when they need the surgery, a little simple operation, you just pluck it out, and then you can start doing the peritoneal dialysis. This is basically what it looks like. Nothing to the imagination. It's just a catheter that's kept in the abdomen until it's ready to use. The bottom line is it works. So I'm not going to go into all this stuff because we don't have time, but it works. Urgent start is a sensible solution. Somebody comes in a perfect world, you would be assessed and you would have time. But if you crash into the hospital and you don't have time, then what we simply do is we'll put a PD catheter in, we'll dialyze you in the hospital with PD catheters and send you home to the PD unit. And then if you decide to change back to hemo, that's your option, but you'll at least start with PD. And you may have to have acute hemo for a couple of days, but then after that, we're going to move you to PD. That's what we call urgent start. So this is not a perfect world, and so we do urgent starts. And like I say, 3 to 14 days, we get a catheter inserted, and we're ready to go. And patients really end up doing much better if they do an urgent start than if you have to have a catheter and then try to convince them that they need to go back on to PD or hemo. So anyway, this is basically the algorithm I just discussed, and I see Jerome coming towards me here. What is the benefit of an urgent start? Well, the basic benefit is that patients survive more, they have less hospitalizations, their kidney function is preserved, they have a lower readmission rate to the hospital, and this is based on a matched retrospective cohort study that DaVita did with 25,587 patients, and they followed them for 1.2 years. So anyway, the bottom line is that hospitalizations and mortality go down with peritoneal dialysis. And just the bottom line is other studies have also demonstrated that, and it's evidence-based, and it is very beneficial. And I'm not going to have time to go through that, but trust me, we've done a lot of research on this, and it is very beneficial to do an urgent start PD. So anyway, it's optimal. It's something that we should consider. I need to wrap up. And I don't really have time to talk about the barriers. There really aren't that many. and we can usually work around most of them. So there have been systemic reviews that have confirmed this. There are some complications, but they're minimal, and I recommend urgent starts. How to get started? The best way to get started is to talk to your nephrologist. We're all getting up to speed on this, and we're all going to be able to help you. And it's a cooperative effort. Just spread the word. Keep people informed about it yourself. You may have friends that need dialysis. Let them know that peritoneal dialysis is probably an ideal option. And so I appreciate the opportunity to talk and give this lecture. And I'm not going to talk about the steps because we all know what they are. And I already talked about patient identification. Patients love this, and there's a lot of testimonials to it. And that's me. Okay, well, I'm going to conclude now. Thank you very much.
I want to say thank you, Dr. Fadem, for another great presentation filled with insight and energy. And sometimes I used to always wonder, were you a nephrologist? Were you a computer geek? Were you a photographer? You wear many hats and you wear them all well. So we thank you for spending the time with us and enlightening us as usual. Our next two speakers joining us are allied industry partners. You heard from Dr. Tarver, how the FDA is supporting home dialysis, and you just heard from Dr. Fadem, benefits of home dialysis, what patients should know, and ask to determine if home is the right treatment for them. So now you will hear from two companies that are committed to advancing home dialysis therapies and a technology that supports going home. So these two individuals are not talking about concepts and theories. They're actually providing the technology that is or will be used by many of us. So with that, I'm pleased to welcome Isaac Martis, an inspiring leader whose career has been dedicated to transforming patient care through innovation. As an associate director for renal innovation and pipeline at Baxter International, Inc., Isaac has spent over 15 years developing disruptive technologies that change the way healthcare is delivered around the globe. Currently, he serves as the commercial lead for Baxter Kidney Care's top research and development project, which is focused on radically reducing the burden of dialysis for individuals on peritoneal dialysis. His commitment to finding groundbreaking solutions is not just about improving technology, it's about improving lives. Isaac, thank you so much for joining us, and the podium is yours, my friend.
Thank you, Richard. It's an honor to be here. Dr. Fadem, that was a fantastic overview. Your passion and dedication for home dialysis and the patient truly shines. So I'm here on behalf of Baxter to talk about innovation in home dialysis. Before we get into that, I just want to talk about a quick change that's occurring with kidney care at Baxter. So we're establishing a standalone company where kidney care is going to be part of called Vantive. It's an exciting journey that a lot of us that are part of kidney care are incredibly excited about. As many know, Baxter Healthcare has been in this space for 70 plus years. We brought the first commercial complete dialysis system to market. We brought PD to the home for our patients there. We've had many transformative innovations in CRT and HD and PD through that time. We currently serve over 1 million patients annually with our products in over 100 countries. As Vantive, so over the next few months, we'll be making this transition and we'll be becoming a new company. It's the next evolution of our kidney care legacy, something that we're incredibly excited about. All the things that we already do well, we're going to continue to do, and we're going to find new ways to improve and have renewed focus and dedication to our patients and to delivering the best we can for vital organs and for kidney care. One of the areas where I get most passionate about is it's allowing us to increase our investments in innovation, and that's something that we're going to see come out to market and so forth over the upcoming years. So with that, welcome to Vantive, extending lives and expanding possibilities. And now I'll flip over to the innovation side that we're all excited about. So for us, innovation starts with the patient journey. And when I look at the patient journey from when a patient first finds out that they have CKD, through hopefully getting to transplant and so forth, the only way I can describe it is that the journey sucks. It's a really bad journey. The patient is often overwhelmed, they're confused, they may be in denial, and this roller coaster of emotions for them and their care partners, it never really ends. Even when you talk about modality selection or starting dialysis, all of these are hard as they try to continue with the things that are most important to them. Very, very difficult. And then when we look across it, there's nothing in the system that does a great job of helping. If we could clone Dr. Fadem and have him everywhere, that would probably be a solution. Unfortunately, our technology doesn't quite allow for that yet. But what we see is a very fragmented care system where there's poor care coordination across the entire spectrum. And not all providers have the same goals or alignments or are situated or ready to support patients and their care partners in their journey through CKD. And then you overlay on top of that just the complications and different focuses and outcomes and so forth that different folks will have, and it makes it all terribly, terribly complicated. And that's not to say that we can't do better. We absolutely can do better, and we will do better. So as we start to look through that journey, there's a couple areas that we know are all super important for us to improve on, whether it's from identifying CKD patients early, so they have the time to think about what their options may be, so they have the time to learn about how they can delay progression and implement those solutions, whether it's about reducing the complications that they may have during those time periods, improving their outcomes, shared decision-making, thinking about what their options are, being able to take time to understand what that might mean, and to digest information that usually comes at them in just kind of a waterfall that's very overwhelming. And to optimizing transition to transplant. All of these things are incredibly important, and they're all areas that we can improve on. Where we're going to focus on for the discussion, though, is if you're already on dialysis, what are some of the things that we might be able to do to improve that? So if we go down one layer deeper for our patients that are on dialysis, there's a lot of areas that we see possible improvement for. For the patient, sleep quality can really suffer. You have a device, you have a tube if you're on PD, the way that you're engaging with your partner or your loved ones may have changed. You have to do this therapy for an extended period of time. Training can be complicated, setup can be tricky, you're worried about infection and so forth. For our HCPs and providers, I think we saw earlier that there's issues with just staffing. Hospitals are changing the way they deliver care. They may be closing. A lot of the HCPs are overwhelmed, so how do we find ways to better support them? How do we find ways to help deliver the right insights to reduce complications for their patients? And overall, help them do more with less, just as the system progresses in a way with possible reduced funding, reduced staffing, and so forth. For us, this ladders into three key innovation categories. The first one is the transformational product innovation to improve the patient experience. You can think of this at the therapy level, so how do we fundamentally change the way that we do therapy that may result in drastically reducing the amount of time required to be connected to dialysis, the amount of complications in the home, and so forth. The next area that we'll be talking more about in this presentation is technology to improve complication management and timely interventions, whether it's remotely and at the home, and how do we communicate that to the appropriate providers and clinicians. And the last one is digital platforms to improve clinic workflow and enable proactive patient care. In a lot of ways, helping the patient have the best possible outcomes also requires us to help the clinician. Everything is quite intertwined. I'm going to focus on two innovations that we're working on that we call exploratory. For those that aren't familiar, what that means is these are critical problems that we're trying to solve, where we're still trying to identify what the best concept is that maximizes technical and clinical feasibility. After that, once we successfully identify that, we move something on to what we call new product development, which is where we partner with the FDA and other folks to bring that to market. Under complication management and timely intervention, the first one's peritonitis. You've heard a little bit about it. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's one of the leading reasons for PD dropout. It's what I've been told, an incredibly terrible experience if you have peritonitis. It can be incredibly painful. If it's not treated in a timely manner, it could have dire complications. It's one of the primary fears that patients, and I would say many clinicians, have when they think about PD. It impacts their confidence and kind of just is always sitting there as a burden on how do they do things perfectly and so forth to be able to avoid it. On top of that, detecting it is a little bit tricky. We don't have great technological solutions. I think there's one or two that are on market or coming to market that all have various pros and cons associated with them. But the standard of care is currently for a PD patient. They look at their effluent that's in a bag, and if it's cloudy, that may be a sign that they have peritonitis. What does it mean if it's cloudy? If you can read a newspaper through it, it may be okay. Pretty ambiguous, I would argue. I think one of the things that we're most excited as we're looking at this space and as we're developing some of our key concepts is getting an inline solution that is always on, that's able to monitor what's happening in the effluent. So it's not a measure of cloudiness, but by actually what's actually in the effluent and is there a risk of peritonitis, and then translating that to earlier detection, which would be earlier treatment, which should hopefully avoid a lot of the complications and issues that patients and clinicians have. On the other side is what we call fluid volume status. So I think we heard briefly from Dr. Fadem about fluid volume. This is probably one of the most critical problems for all dialysis patients. So what is fluid volume? The terms that are usually used, I think, in a clinical perspective is if a patient is in fluid balance or euvolemic, and then what's not good is if they have too much fluid or if they have too little fluid, so hyper or hypovolemia. Incredibly common. It's estimated 25 to 75% of patients currently have it. It's a wide range. It depends on the clinic and the country of origin and so forth. But it's kind of everywhere. It's incredibly difficult to detect. So the standard of care is you either take your weight or you use blood pressure. Both of those are highly variable depending on time of day, what you're doing, if you're stressed, what you ate, what your treatment was, physical exertion, and so forth. If you have it, the management and consequences of it get worse over time. So immediately it may not be a huge issue if you're just slightly out of balance, but as time goes on, it gets harder to manage, and the consequences can be pretty disruptive for everything leading to negative cardiovascular outcomes, to just a negative patient experience of fatigue and feeling tired and so forth. Could also relate to things like itching and all that stuff. We're at the final stages, I would say, of our exploratory process on one of the concepts we're really excited about here. Something that a patient would use daily that would be able to tell them what their fluid status is, that would be able to feed back then into optimizing their daily prescription, as well as giving some guidance on what's happening with, say, food consumption, fluid consumption, and so forth. We think it has a huge possibility of improving the patient's quality of life, cardiovascular health, and maintaining appropriate fluid status is critical for transplant eligibility. So that's something that gets us very excited as well. So innovation enabling home dialysis. So a lot of this are things that we either have on market currently, have recently brought on market, or will be bringing on market very soon. So if you think of the prior one as exploratory things that we're excited that we're working on in the lab, these are things that are available now or will be very shortly. If we flip to the next slide, please. So a lot of these fall under our ShareSource umbrella, which is our digital platforms for proactive patient care. And it all starts with our clinical portal. So this is what enables our clinicians to be able to see what's going on with the patient on a daily basis, how their treatment's going, what their vitals are, any key trends, and so forth, and be able to intervene and engage as needed. The next one is an app that we've launched in a number of countries. So this enables the patient and the clinician to engage with each other. It also has resources for information about the disease, technical support, as well as capturing some vitals and automating the transfer back to the clinician. The next one that we have that we're excited about is PD telecare. So this was in pilot in the US and has just recently been brought to market fully. When we think about how rough the patient experience can be, and you think about you're suddenly getting trained on a bunch of stuff, and then you're told to go home and do it. That first 90 days we find to be very complicated and very overwhelming. So what we've been able to do is tap into our fantastic technical and clinical support services that we have based on our learnings from the clinics that we run outside of the US. And we use them to monitor the patient and interact with the clinician to both intervene directly, communicate with the patient on issues they may be having, whether they're clinical or technical, as well as working with their clinicians on how to improve things. What we found is that it's a fantastic program. It's really helping patients, and it's helping them be more successful and their clinicians be more successful. The next one is AdeQuest. So this is the personalized prescription modeling that we have that allows you to take all of the patient's characteristics and information and use that to have an individualized, optimized prescription for them. Instead of kind of a guideline that just says roughly start on X, it allows you to really tailor to make sure you're trying to get the best prescription for them to hit the outcomes that the clinician's looking for. And then the last one, and this is ever evolving, is around analytics. So this is taking all the information that we have that's coming from ShareSource, from the clinical portal, from PD telecare, AdeQuest, and so forth, and finding insights and trends and so forth to enable clinicians to have better support tools, identify issues, and be able to respond more quickly to their patients. Thank you. Really appreciate the time to talk about innovation here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Isaac. Baxter has been a long-time leader in home dialysis, and on behalf of AAKP, it's always an honor supporting the company's efforts. I know we're running a little bit behind with this session, but we have one final speaker that we want to get to. So now I would like to introduce someone who's joining us live today from California, Ms. Leslie Trigg. Ms. Trigg is the chair and CEO of Outset Medical. She has dedicated her career to transforming the way we think about kidney care with a passion for patient empowerment and innovation. Under her leadership, Outset Medical has revolutionized dialysis with the development of the Tablo hemodialysis system, a game-changing technology designed to simplify dialysis and make it more accessible for patients, both in clinics and at home. Leslie's commitment to reducing the complexity and cost of dialysis care has made her a driving force behind the push for more patient-centric healthcare solutions. Leslie, welcome, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, and if you wouldn't mind popping up the slides, that would be great as well. I kind of outlined for myself what are the main steps from inception to commercialization. And what does medical device innovation, really require? And I came up with 4 things that are absolutely essential ingredients to innovation. It requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of money. And I'll pause on those. And again, I'll use Outset as an example. We started developing the Tablo system in 2011. And we first put it into the US market toward the very tail end of 2018. 2019 was our first really full availability year. So you think about 8 years from concept to commercialization. And the median for medical device companies is actually 11 years. Because you might think, well, 8 years, maybe you guys just weren't that good. And that's possible. I also chair the Medical Device Manufacturers Association, which is why I'm here in DC. And I just saw this data this morning. The median is 11 years from concept to commercialization. The median amount of money to develop a medical device across the board in any clinical space is now over $100 million. In our case, we had to raise over $450 million privately. We've since raised more money in the public markets, but over $400 million privately in order to bring this idea to fruition. So it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money. I'd also say it takes a lot of naivete. I did not know anything about dialysis other than my personal experience through a family member, but I didn't really know anything about the space, the care delivery model, what other devices were out there, what problems needed to be solved. Where could we use new technology? It was all new to me because I had this cardiology background. And I'm really glad that I didn't know what we were embarking on. When we developed the concept for Tableau, and I can talk a little bit about what is the concept, I did not know how hard it was going to be on the engineering side. We were attempting to engineer something that had never been designed or manufactured before. And it probably helped that I'm not an engineer. And so it was really easy for me to just say things that seemed obvious, but was really challenging for the engineers. Things like, well, I don't want it to be more than like hip height. You know, we don't want to medicalize the home. We don't want to hospitalize the home. It has to be non-intimidating. Small form factor. It has to have a touch screen. It has to have custom animation. All these things that that we felt were really important to the user experience were very, very hard to engineer. So you need an incredible amount of naivete. Otherwise, you probably would never try. And I think the last thing that you need, and it might sound kind of funny, but I was thinking a lot about this week preparing for this talk, is I think you need a lot of indignation. You have to kind of be pissed off about what you want to change, because that's the driving emotion and that galvanizes a group of people together to say, you know what, this isn't right, or this could be better, or this group of people deserve something that's not good enough but is truly, truly great, and be a little pissed off about it. So those are the four things that have driven this group of people at Outset. Yes, we've been driven by money. We've had to raise a lot of money, time, a lot of naivete, but it's allowed us to also hold on to kind of a beginner's mindset. When you don't know the way things are and you don't know why not, you kind of go after, well, why? Why wouldn't we? And I think that's been super valuable. And I'd say the last thing that medical device innovation requires is absolutely no fear. Absolutely no fear. You have to keep the blinders on. You can't, there's a famous, I think, race car driver quotation, focus on the road, not the walls. And that's true. You go in and really try to be very disruptive to a space, maybe especially like this one, which has been dominated by, you know, a few very, very large incumbents on the service side and the equipment side for roughly 3 or 4 decades. That can be very intimidating. And if we were only focusing on that, and how daunting that is, and how low our odds were going to be, we never would have even started. So it's you got to have a sort of a fearless attitude and be just super committed and convicted to the road that you're driving down, and then the why. What are you trying to get to? So we had our step 1 check. We had our problem statement: more access to home, and open up the envelope for who could be successful at home. And then we had our vision. We're going to use a device to do that. So then the next step is step 2. What's the right solution? What's the right way to solve for this? And so what we did in researching this question, we spent a lot of time in people's homes. I spent many hours, days, and weeks sitting in people's bedroom, not to be weird, but sitting in people's bedrooms and living rooms and kitchens and actually bathrooms, really understanding and observing. I think the greatest tool we have at our disposal as device developers is actually the power of observation. You ask someone a question, and, you know, it's human nature. We all want to be helpful and we want to give the right answer verbally. When you're observing somebody, you're getting much greater insight into the way things really are versus what somebody may be telling you. So we spent, like I said, a lot of time in the home. We spent time in the dialysis clinics, a lot of time in dialysis clinics, kind of wondering, why are there these ginormous water treatment rooms? And maybe what if we could make the whole water treatment room go away? What if we could put, you know, a water treatment room in a box? Somebody referenced Steve Jobs earlier. It's like 1,000 songs in your pocket, which was their tagline for a long time with the iPod. We took a similar approach. What if we could do 1,000 square foot water treatment room in a 15-inch box? And so we decided we were going to go after that. Our answer to step 2, what's the right way to solve it, was studying kind of what people didn't like about the home hemodialysis solutions. We wanted to go after a consumer form factor that would not be intimidating, that would not medicalize or hospitalize the home, number one. Number two, we wanted to get rid of all mental math, no memorization, and we wanted to drive for as much automation as humanly possible in the setup and the takedown of a home hemo machine. We wanted to get rid of all advanced preparation. We didn't want to force people to do batching and take 8 or 9 hours to kind of make the dialysate before their treatment. We wanted on-demand custom dialysate to the individual's prescription. That was the technology vision. That's part of why it took us so long, because that was hard. And then lastly, we felt the right way that we wanted to solve for is really minimizing the storage burden, and that's something we heard a lot about from people who were living obviously in smaller spaces and did not have a lot of space to store a bunch of boxes. And so we went after minimizing the storage requirements as well. Those 4 solve fors were our answer to broadening patient access and patient choice by removing some of the at least technology-related barriers to home dialysis adoption and retention. So that was step 2. So then we knew how we were going to solve it. And so we ended up designing. Now the translational innovation is, what does that look like? How do you put that into a machine? We did do things like put over 70 sensors in Tableau, automating most of the steps of setup, shrinking the number of steps of setup so that it can really be set up in about, the median setup time when we later did human factor studies is 8 minutes to get the disposables paired up with the system. We do have touchscreen guidance. It's custom animated by step. We loaded 2-way bidirectional Wi-Fi connectivity. So all the data from every treatment is automatically uploaded to the cloud and to the provider's cloud. So there's no more data flow sheets and nothing that needs to be sent in. And then obviously we made it small and mobile. Like I said, a consumer form factor. So that became kind of the step 2A was the translational innovation into the physical world. Step 3 is, can you build it? And I have some really funny photos. These are very funny. That was the first incarnation of Tableau, and it's changed a lot. When you have a second, maybe you could flip back to the previous slide, but that is not what the device looks like today. But I wanted to share it with you because this is really what early stage engineering looks like. And we were not entirely sure for many, many years that we could build it. Step 3, can you build it? If you would have asked me back in 2013, 2014, I would have told you, honestly, I am not sure. The middle step was an example of iteration and development of the touchscreen, what we call the graphic user interface, the GUI. And our graphic user interface has hundreds of screens. How do you develop something like that? And I'm 53 years old, so I'm still a fan of paper. Well, so our method was, we're going to develop this thing on paper. And so we had like walls and walls and walls all over the office filled with images, what we wanted, the different screens of the graphic user interface to look like, and we'd be marking it up on pens on the wall. No, go here, and this needs to go point back there, and so it was a really fun process, but it was very labor intensive. And then lastly, this will give you an example of when you fail. That last picture on the right, you're like, what the heck is that? That was one of our very early prototypes that I walked by a conference room much earlier, and I noticed that this prototype, which was discarded as a directional concept, had found a second home as a TV tray for somebody's lunch. So sometimes, actually a lot of times, you fail. You learn from it, you get back up, and you keep going. The step 4 then, after you do, can you build it, is does it work? And this is obviously the most important question. Who cares if you can build it if it doesn't work? And it doesn't work for patients, or it doesn't work for caregivers, doesn't work for nurses, physicians, et cetera. How did we go about assessing this? First and foremost, before we ever even got into human use, we did years of human factors testing. This is an example of a caregiver. These folks came into our office and would set up Tableau, take it down, no treatment, but set up and take down again and again and again and again and again. And there is a very funny video that I'm not going to play of this tray, this top tray falling over again and again and again. And you see things like that. You're like, aha, okay, the hinge mechanism isn't strong enough to support the saline bag. Fix hinge mechanism. So we spent years in this user feedback loop to perfect it. Then we moved into first human use. You can see how the device has kind of evolved. This one is very different than this one. and actually is very different than this version, even of the exterior. So it kept evolving over time. We did our first in human use in Mexico City in a dialysis clinic in Mexico City. We had all these laptops hooked up to Tableau. We had 10 engineers present for the first 25 to 50 treatments, 10 people. I felt that we're just hovering over, making sure that everything was going to go perfectly well, very safely. Then you gain confidence to go into the United States, and our first actually treatment in the US, which was super exciting when we had gotten FDA clearance. And then this was an example of first self-care use when we started gaining the confidence to encourage people to learn how to set it up on their own. This happens to be in a clinic, self-care in a clinic environment. Those were the steps that we took along the way to validate that, yes, the device works therapeutically, clinically, safely and effectively. Step 5, though, is can you prove it? So you may think it works, but step 5, and again, this is any medical device, can you prove that it works to FDA and CMS if a medical device company does have to seek reimbursement or a new code from CMS. In our case, we did not have to do that, but this is a broad talk about medical device innovation. So this is typically an exercise with FDA and CMS. What do you have to prove? First of all, you have to do clinical studies to prove safety and effectiveness. In Tableau's case, we did a nationwide multi-center home clinical trial that compared the use of Tableau in center by a professional person setting it up, a nurse or tech, compared to the use of Tableau at home with a patient and or a caregiver setting it up. And we had to submit that data to the FDA in order to get our FDA clearance for home. Second, you then have to seek regulatory clearance that you have to prove technical equivalence to, in our case, another device that was already on the market. And so for Tableau, we've actually gotten 9 different things cleared through the FDA over the last 8 years. And then lastly, reimbursement. So again, many medical device companies have to seek new reimbursement through new codes or a new higher payment level, which the mean amount of time I just heard this morning on this is 5 years is the mean time after one gets your FDA clearance to when you actually get CMS reimbursement. 5 years. So again, we're talking about time and money for medical device innovation. In our case, we did not need to seek any new codes, but we decided to apply for a new program that CMS had set up a couple years ago called TPNIES, TPNIES. And TPNIES was a program that was reserved for devices that proved that they were a substantial clinical improvement over an existing device in the marketplace. And we were able to generate and provide evidence that Tableau did meet the criteria for a substantial clinical improvement over the home hemodialysis device that was in the market. So we received that designation a few years ago. Step 6, so then you do all that. Okay, so years have gone by. And then you prove that it works, and you prove that you can prove it to the FDA, to CMS. Now, can you scale it? And this is not to be trivialized. You have to scale up your manufacturing. On the left is an image of our manufacturing facility. It's 90,000 square feet. It is about 45 minutes south of San Diego. You have to scale your supply chain. Tableau has hundreds and hundreds of components in it. Our supply chain has roughly we have 400 different suppliers who are supplying us components from all over the world. And then we do all of our own manufacturing for the console and the cartridge. You have to scale up your quality management systems. We are now doing about 1 million treatments a year. And so you have to make sure that you're maintaining your quality management system around not only the console, but your disposables, the cartridges. You have to scale up field service. In our case, we have a large team of field service engineers who go into the home when a preventive maintenance is needed, when a repair is needed. We had to scale up distribution and logistics, making sure everybody gets their supplies exactly when they need it. Of course, you have to scale up sales and in our case, data, privacy, cybersecurity, and then make sure that you have an amazing and scaled remote support team so that there is technical support and clinical support available for patients at home 24/7 in multiple languages. So there's a lot to do in this step. And then lastly, I would say the final step is you'll never have a final step. In my view, you're never done with innovation. Why would you want to be? Why would you want to plant the flag and say, hey, we're done and this is good enough? Because your mindset should never be that it's good enough. It's just one improvement after another, and we will never be done. So I think step 7 is what you do have to fight hard to do is actually preserve that beginner's mindset from the beginning, because you do become more and more and more knowledgeable, and you start to think that you're kind of an expert, and you never are. All of the insights and the good stuff and the innovation, I believe, really does come from being curious and being humble and being naive, and then just set the bar even higher. So as we sit here today, I showed you the very, very beginning in that huge kind of ugly looking, not even device thing in our lab. We have now almost 6,000 tableaus that are being used across the United States. We've done well over 2 million treatments to date. Our retention rate at home is 90% at 90 days compared to 65% with the incumbent device, which we're very proud of. That's the number one thing we're obsessed with is our user experience. What's our retention rate as the marker of, is this individual having a good experience with Tableau and with our team? And we measure Net Promoter Score. Net Promoter Score, NPS as it's called, is used by thousands of companies all over the world. And so we measured our patient Net Promoter Score at 12 months. And the question that you basically ask is one question: would you recommend product to a friend or family member? That's the NPS question. Ours was modified to, would you recommend Tableau for home to other dialysis patients? So, and on a scale of 1 to 10. And lastly, we have worked really hard. This is part of one of our aspirations as a device, to try to make sure that people feel well, not just between treatments, but during treatment. So we've been very focused on what we now call kind of this feeling better effect around Tableau. That's a whole other subject about why this occurs. We've continued to do a lot of studies in the field with patients and caregivers to demonstrate many fewer symptoms while patients are dialyzing on Tableau. So that's a little bit of a tour from the very, very, very beginning all the way. Well, I'll close with what's next and what we're excited about. Potential innovations for this community in the future for us really falls into what we're doing work on, falls into 3 categories: clinically predictive, clinically preventive, and clinically prescriptive. So we're very particularly interested in sensors, and sensors, as we all know, continue to change. I feel like almost on a weekly basis, and just an amazing, amazing amount of technology in the sensor world that we see could be applied to everything from vascular access status through access flow monitoring, which would give somebody an indication about ahead of time about whether an occlusion is forming in that graft or fistula that needs to be addressed. Fluid status was just mentioned in the previous presentation. I agree. I think that's super interesting. In ways that might give a user a heads up that there might be something coming up in the future that they would want to take care of preventively. The identification of potential hypotensive events is another great example. You can get ahead of that with sensors that we have today actually in the system, and providing kind of treatment adjustment recommendations on the screen, again, to try to prevent instead of react to events. And lastly, there is an opportunity. This future could be here. We have the technology, we as a community have the technology to actually start to think about dialysis prescriptions that are far more tailored and far more customized beyond kind of height, weight, and time. And you can do that through sensor technologies that can perform on-demand measurement of electrolytes during treatment, that can measure biochemical markers like urea, creatinine, millimolecule during treatment and trend that over time. And as I said, really kind of customize the prescription, potentially even on a weekly basis, that would be specific to your inputs versus my inputs versus somebody else's inputs. So these are the kind of the vectors of innovation that we're the most excited about and spending a lot of time thinking about here at Outset. So thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed being here.
I'd like to thank our speakers once again, Dr. Tarver, Dr. Fadem, Isaac Martis, and Leslie Trigg. We are grateful for the time and effort everyone put into joining us and delivering such valuable presentations. AAKP is a big proponent of home dialysis if it's a viable option for a patient. And we thank the companies, researchers, and federal agencies like the FDA for supporting the increased use of this treatment option.